But thank you everyone for coming out tonight. I'm Gracie. I'm the events coordinator for print. A few little housekeeping details just before we get started. If you have any questions during the event, please feel free to enter them in the chat box, which is on the bottom right of your screen, or in the question and answer function, which is on the bottom bar of your screen. If you'd like a copy of any of tonight's books, we have all of them in stock, so I'll include the link to the print page. You can click on through. And now I'm going to pass the virtual mic over to Marina Adair, but please join me in virtually welcoming tonight's romance panel.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Marina Adair. I write contemporary romance that is tender and funny and sexy. My new book, Romantically Challenged, is kind of my take on 3 Men and a Baby meets Crazy Rich Asians, where two romantically challenged people end up finding each other, and on their journey to love, they learn to love themselves. So check it out. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kristen. Kristen, why don't you introduce yourself?
Okay. Hi, I'm Kristen McKanagh. I write sweet contemporary romance with heart and humor, all set in small town homes. My first book under this particular pen name is, there it is, I'm pointing to the wrong, is Snowball's Christmas, which is a holiday romance set at a Victorian inn, and each chapter has a point of view from the kitten who is going to be the matchmaker for our romance.
So cute. Vanessa, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Vanessa Riley, and I write historical fiction and historical romance. My current book is A Duke, the Lady and a Baby. Think First Wives Clubs meets 3 Men and a Baby, but in this book there is a secret society that is bound and determined to help women regain their power, particularly widows who've been destitute of society. In this particular book, Patience's baby has been taken from her, and it's up to the widow's grace to help her find a way to get the baby back, and she might fall in love with some really cool dude. I'm just saying.
I'm seeing a trend of 3 Men and a Baby, and actually, Priscilla, I think you also have a series that's kind of similar.
No, there are no babies, and there are no babies in mine. This is Island Affair. It's my latest. It's a beach read. It came out in May. It's book 1 in the Keys to Love series, and it's actually a fake relationship trope. So no babies yet in their relationship, maybe down the road in this series. But this is, in book 1, you'll meet the entire Navarro familia. I guess I should have introduced myself. I am Priscilla Oliveras, USA Today bestselling author of contemporary romance with a Latinx flavor. So in my series, you'll always meet, there'll be one kind of founding familia. In the Keys to Love series, it's the Navarros, and they are 2nd and 3rd generation Cuban familia who live and love and work in Key West. And this book is about Luis Navarro. He is the 2nd oldest son. They are all actually firefighter paramedics. And Luis has a bit, I was going to say a little bit, but it's a lot of it, of a savior complex. And in Island Affair, like I mentioned, it's the fake relationship trope. It is a story about what happens when a savvy social media influencer, that's our heroine, Sarah Vance, arrives in Key West for a week-long vacation with her judgmental family, and only to find out that her loser boyfriend has stood her up. And the last thing she wants to do is show up at the rental home and have been stood up, by her boyfriend, and then have to just deal with that with all of the family. And she meets Luis Navarro, our hero, and Luis has a week of vacation that he doesn't want to take, but he's kind of dealing with some things or not dealing with them. And so his captain has said, take this time off and get your head on straight. And instead he decides to take Sarah up on her offer when she asks him to step in and pretend to be her boyfriend for the week of vacation. So that's kind of what happens. That's kind of the setup. And in the end, like every good romance, then the question becomes, is this fake relationship going to last, or is it going to fade like the beautiful Key West sunsets? Dun, dun.
So no baby, but I guess there were the 3 men. I got the 3 men right.
Yes, there are 3 Navarro brothers and 1 sister. So yes, 3 men, and fading.
And a lady.
Maybe fading kind of leads into ghosting, Sarv. I'm not sure.
I have a rom-com movie comp, but it's more 90s and 80s. So I'm Sarah Tash. I'm the co-author of Ghosting, a Love Story with Sarah Skilton, hence Tash Skilton. We kind of joined our names together. And this is basically a You've Got Mail meets Cyrano in like modern dating thing. It's about two rival dating profile ghostwriters who basically are hired to spruce up people's dating profiles. And they know each other in real life because they fight over the big table at the cafe that they go to, which I commission artists to make them. This is them at their cafe. But what they don't know is that they have been hired by clients from their rival companies to ghostwrite their profiles and chat with each other. So they're kind of chatting with each other. They think they're chatting with like their, the other clients on behalf of their own clients. There's a lot of like mixed identities. And this was basically it's my first adult book. I've written 4 other books that are young adult and middle grade. But it was my chance to kind of pay tribute to Nora Ephron and those like classic rom-coms I really love. And it takes place in New York where I live. So it was really fun to kind of really pay tribute to Nora Ephron because she also loved New York. So.
And one of the best rom-com screenwriters ever.
Yes.
Or writers, I guess. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I guess we will jump into the questions. The first one is, how does your present day event affect your writing process and your story ideas?
How do present day events?
Yes, I'm assuming like during COVID, how is COVID and being sheltered in place affecting how you write and story ideas?
I would say I don't feel like I had to adjust. Like a lot of people had to adjust to working from home, right? And that was nothing new for as far as writing comes, right? Maybe if any of us like have day jobs, so sure, my teaching transitioned to all virtual from live, but the work from home was nothing new. But for me personally, and talking with other writer friends, I've found it harder during COVID and everything, the whole pandemic, to shut out the real world. Normally I listen to music when I write. So normally it's not a problem to put on my headphones and fall into my story world. But I have found that good thing is that when you have deadlines, you have to meet them. So you have to write, but it was a little bit harder. Or I had a harder time. I would start writing and then in 15 minutes, I'd be like, I need to go check on something. I need to call one of my kids. I need to, I just had a harder time shutting it out and falling into my story world. So writing has been a little harder for me.
For me,
Go ahead, Vanessa.
Oh, no, sorry, go.
No, it's okay.
I was going to say, for me, it was more justification of my lifestyle because now everybody got it, right? Because as authors, how can you sit in front of your keyboard and the screen all day long? Well, you see, now you understand. Now you understand. So to me, that was a big thing.
It can't be done.
But like Priscilla, I write historicals, and so you wouldn't think necessarily that present day things affect my world, but it does, because I started looking up things like Boulogne fever when COVID hit, and the similarities of different types of pandemics that affected my early 1800s world. When social strife and things like that, you can feel it, and it invades the characters. So it's there are places I think some of my storytelling will go that's unexpected, and it's purely a facet of what's going on in the world today. And I think it's richer for that, because all of us need an avenue to vent or to rail or to have a catharsis kind of moment. And for me, that's writing. And so I am what I hear, and I am what's in my environment. So it always comes back out in my writing.
For me, it's been night and day, because I have a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and they used to be in school 5 days a week, and now they are not. And that is when I wrote, because I really needed the time to sit down for 30 minutes in front of my computer, let myself like get back into my story and then write. And I don't have that luxury anymore. I have to just write whenever I can. Sometimes it's after their bed at 9 p.m. and sometimes it's with the doors locked and my headphones on and my husband chasing them. So it's been hard. I also, because I write contemporary, normally that's, you know, because I'm not great at world building, I'll be very honest. Normally that's not so hard, but I don't know what contemporary looks like in 2022 or 2023, when my next book probably takes place. So I just decided that I'm just gonna not pretend it never happened. I mean, I don't know how to write a romance in COVID. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know people wearing masks in office 2 years from now, you know. It just, so it's been a real adjustment. So I feel like once I'm out on the other side of it, I'll be able to like look back and be proud of what I accomplished. Right now, I'm just trying to get through every day by day and like meet my deadlines, which is really tough.
Yes. I think what you mentioned about writing like post-COVID is a good, you know, question, like writing about post-COVID. I'm doing the same thing you are. I'm just writing the world as it was before and waiting to see, because I don't think anybody knows what the normal will be like.
And I also think it's important that in 5 years, when someone picks up a book, it could possibly be dated with everyone wearing masks or in the pandemic. And I also think people read to get away from all of the craziness outside. I think the last thing they would want would be to pick up an escape and find themselves right back in sheltering in place and COVID. Yeah.
As a reader, I don't want to do that. I'm like, I'm living that. Thanks.
Yeah.
Mine was similar to yours. I didn't realize how much I was struggling with the writing piece of it because I was just at home anyways, kind of like Vanessa said, until my kids went back to school and I was like, oh my gosh, this was so much easier. No wonder I've been struggling for 6 months. But what really I found almost funny was that in the COVID timeframe, I've finished 3 books that have gone to editors. And I've gotten feedback on all 3. And on all 3, one of my main characters was mean. And so apparently all my anger came out in the character. I had no idea until I would get the feedback back and be like, oh, gotta soften this one up too.
Good therapy.
Yeah.
So while all of us write romance, we all write in different eras. Even the contemporary authors on this panel, some write small towns, some write big city. So who are your ideal readers for each one of you? And can you kind of describe who would love your book?
I guess, okay. I think a romance reader in general is gonna glom on any of our books, right? So I think I admire all of your work. For me, it's kind of a tough question. I want to say I know that I do not write super sexy. So if that's your jam, I hope you would enjoy the sensuality of my books. Honestly, I think when I'm writing, I'm just writing for like the romance reader in general. With my books, I'm hoping that anybody who sits down and when they get to the end of my book, they feel like they've made some new friends, they've maybe fallen in love with a hero or heroine, and that they want to visit again, so it ends up on their keeper shelf. You're gonna get a little bit of, or a lot of it of Latinx flavor, but I will say I've had an audience member at a live panel ask me, if I'm not Latinx, am I gonna get your stories? And my main answer is, if you're a romance reader, you're gonna get my story. Yes, Luis is, and all of his, family and siblings and parents, are Cuban, but that's not all they are. So my hope is, if you're not Latinx and you read one of my books, that you feel like maybe you've experienced a little bit of their culture. And if you are Latinx, whether you're Cuban, from Puerto Rico, or, from Argentina, wherever, I hope that you appreciate seeing a little bit of our culture on the pages. But I think in general, if you like heartfelt familia themes and characters in everyday situations, because I don't write a lot of spies and there are not a lot of things blowing up, but emotional reads, then you would like a Priscilla Oliveras romance.
For me, it's probably humor. I think I write rom-coms. I want the comedy to pull as much weight as the romance, and I come from a screenwriting background. Actually, Sarah does too. So we really structured it like a movie rom-com. So I think that if you want like a really funny, like cozy movie rom-com in book form, I think that's what this is, and that's probably what most of my books are. The YAs as well.
Kristen,
Okay.
Okay, I can go. So I actually have 3 different pen names, and each one aims at a kind of a different audience. But really, when I write, I think similar to everybody else, I just write for the romance readers. So somebody who wants to see an HEA happily ever after on the page. These are as a romance reader personally, I read pretty much every genre out there and love them. And I know that that's not necessarily true for everybody. So mine are this Kristen McKanagh name. All these books are sweet. There's no sensuality to them. They're just really heartfelt romances. I like to incorporate a little bit of humor. And I think for me, what I love writing the most is the characters, just characters who you want to be friends with, or who jump off the page, or who you root for. So that's what you're going to find with these.
I write for all romance readers, but I particularly think that if you like history, if you like to know facets of history that you may never have heard of, if you like to be immersed in the world building of the 1800s, then I think you should look at a Vanessa Riley book. I'm going to take you and we're going to broach subjects that you probably have never seen in a typical historical romance. I'm going to take you to places you probably have never seen in a typical historical romance, but I'm going to make you laugh. I'm going to leave you with hope. And I very much so always have very strong sisterhood. So you're going to see the interplay of the sisterhoods, the bonds between women, as important as the romance. And you do get a happily ever after.
And for me, I would say humor as well. I'm not funny in real life, but somehow I'm really funny on the page. I'm also very character driven because I also have a background in screenwriting. And so for me, it's all about the characters and what they're dealing with and how they're the worst possible people for each other, but in the end, the best possible person for each other. I also write very tender and deep emotional conflicts between the characters. And so, yeah, so if you want kind of humor and tender and sexy, then I'm your girl. So let's see, Nancy Mills wants to know, do you guys plot, or are you kind of a pantser? Do you do it by the seat of your pants, or are you very meticulous and detailed with your plot?
So mine is funny for this. I call myself a plantser because I'm a little bit of both. I started out pantsing completely. My very first book, I wrote scenes out of order. Like I wrote what I could see in scenes and then connected them later. Now I do write straight through but I just do major kind of beats for my plot points. I don't like really get into the details of it because I find that if I get too much into the details of plotting before I write the book, it's kind of like watching the movie and then reading the book and you're like, I already know the story. So I try not to over plot for that reason, but I do plot.
I am a plantster, but I think I'm probably more on the plotter side of the planting issue.
So you're a plotster?
Yeah.
That's right.
Definitely, because I look at my characters and I think about what their goals are, their relationship state, their belief, and my favorite is the lie that they tell, that we all grow up with lies that we tell each other or we keep to ourselves in, and it's that thing, that lens that kind of shapes, you ask somebody, does this dress look good on me? And they give you a question. It's like, oh, you think I'm fat in this dress, huh? Right? It's that lens that we look through. And so I think about that. And then I think about how does that change at every point in the story, the beginning, the middle, and the end. And once I have that matrix mapped out for my characters, then I pants from point to point to point, because I know where I'm going. I know the emotional you know, drive of the book, because I know how that life and that lie and their beliefs have to change in order to get to that happy ever after.
I write similar to you, Vanessa, although I'm very much a plotter, but I have to know before I even start what my characters are afraid of and what they need. And if I know that for each character, then I need to make sure that my heroine's goal complicates my hero's goal and vice versa. And then if I know I have really good conflict, I can continue plotting out my story. But I'm a very meticulous plotter. My outlines are about 20 to 30,000 words. I need to know the dialogue going into it, everyone's motivations. In fact, I do plotting retreats. I do one in LA every year, although we've had to miss it this year, with Jill Chavez and Rayanne Thane. And then I do another one in Tahoe, which was supposed to be this week, with Sky Jordan, Alicia Hyder, Elizabeth Barrett, and Jill Chavez. And I find that the more books I write, it's getting harder to find original ideas, and I don't want to write the same story all over again. So having plotting partners really helps me open my mind to maybe new twists on an old story or new ideas I would never have thought of. So I'm a very meticulous plotter.
I'm a plotter. I think the only time that I kind of edge into the plantser or the plotzer is once I start going, if a character wants to go in a different direction. Often if I listen to them instead of stick with what I had planned to do, their idea is better. But for me to start off, I will say one of the hardest parts for me, the hardest times for me to silence that imposter syndrome is the beginning of a book, starting a book. And so for me, I like to spend a lot of time getting to know my characters, doing GMC charts. I will, so goal motivation charts, like internal and external goal motivation and conflict for my main characters, sometimes also for the secondary characters if they play a major role. I will, to get to know my heroine a lot better, I will journal or like do diary entries from when they were younger, especially a term that a lot of people may have heard of is like, what's your character's wound? Meaning an event, or maybe it's multiple events that happened to them in the past that have really shaped who they are, like now when the book opens. Often it could be what's stopping them from being able to grow in the way that they need to grow. So I'll like journal as my heroine the night or the day that happened, to try to kind of get inside her head to know really how it affected her. And I will, for me, usually even if it's probably like 3/4 of the way, I will plot out the major scenes that need to happen. It helps me feel like with that imposter syndrome, I can silence it, as in like, see, I know what the hell I'm doing. So be quiet now because I need to start writing. And usually I'll know that last scene, kind of what type of scene I want it to be. Oftentimes if it's like at the end of a series, then I want all the familia together, you know, at some kind of event, and I can picture that. So I'll have these major scenes plotted out, but then as I go, if something better comes, you know, like a better idea, or as I learn more about the characters, because that does happen with me. The more you write, you know, you get into the story, then you discover little facets about your character. And so I feel like it's important for my process anyway, to not get in my own way. And when, you know, a better idea comes up, go with it and, you know, take it as a nice gift that it is.
Yeah, I'm very similar. I think because of the screenwriting, I am a plotter. I think that just kind of goes with that. And for I also need to plot because I hate writing first drafts so much that if I don't plot it out, I will stop. I won't finish it. But if I have it plotted out, if I spend the time doing the outline and I'm like, okay, fine, I just have to write this next scene and I know what's happening in it, like even if it's just a broad stroke. And sometimes my outlines get very dense. Like sometimes I'll have like a surge of like dialogue that I know I want in there and I'll write out the whole dialogue scene. And sometimes my chapter is like literally one sentence. I'm very unhappy with myself when I get to like chapter 5 and it's one sentence of outline. But what I do is I write, I've started writing like the first however many pages because I want to get a feel for the character. So then I'm kind of just let it flow. And then whenever I get stuck is when I stop and outline. But with this book, because it was co-written, we really had to outline, because we really kind of had to know what we were going to do, and where, you know, each one of us was going to take the story and make sure it was all kind of, you know, cohesive. But yeah, I'm an outliner forever. I love Scrivener very much. I will talk about it to no end.
Use
Anyone who
Scrivener
listens.
too. And Vanessa,
Yeah.
you use Scrivener. Yeah.
I love Scrivener.
Yeah.
I would,
So
think it would be really hard to be a pantser when you are co-writing, because then if you went off in different directions, it could be hard to rein back in. Yeah.
So we're starting to get close to time end, because we end at 4:30. So I wanted to ask, and Kristen, why don't we start with you? What's coming out next for you? What books are you working on? What do you have coming out next?
So next, as Kristen McKanagh, I have my first Amish romance, which I'm really excited about. I started devouring those books a couple of years ago, and so that is coming in April or May. And then the next book with the kitten, featuring the kitten, will be coming next Christmas. That's the 12 Days of Snowball. And then as Abigail Owen, I've got a book coming out this month called Try As I Smite. That is a paranormal take on A Christmas Carol, so Halloween and Christmas all in one. And nothing at the moment for Katie Scott, so that's me.
That's
You're
efficient.
busy. Who?
Someone else? Just Priscilla, why don't you go ahead and jump on in?
I have my next release that's coming out is actually a re-release. I wrote a Christmas novella, a holiday novella for the Fern Michaels anthology in 2018. It's a cousin in the Fernandez Familia. That those are the three sisters that were in my debut series, the Matched to Perfection series. And so Kensington is actually pulling out that novella and releasing it as a standalone digital holiday novella. And so that is, I don't know with my light there, it's Holiday Home Run. And so that one's on pre-order now. It will release at the end of October. And then actually book 2 in the Keys to Love series is Anchored Hearts. That is set to release next May. I'm actually finishing up copy edits for that right now. So next May will be Anchored Hearts. And then in June, there's another novella that I'm in. It's called Summer in the City. It's it's an anthology, and there are 3 novellas that are 3 best friends. They all live in New York City, and they're planning to go away for the weekend, but Friday night they each have different plans, so they go their separate ways, and there's a power outage across New York City and all of the boroughs. And so it's what happens to the 3 best friends individually, and actually Sarah, who is the other half of Tash Skilton. So Sarah Skilton is in that, and her novella is called Mind Games. Mine is called Lights Out, and that anthology, Summer in the City, will release in June. So I've got a May and a June release next year. Let's see, Vanessa, Sarv, who has it gone?
So we are currently working on Tash Skilton book 2. Which again, this has been a real weird time to write, but so we just finished the first draft, and we're just we're working it out. So I don't know when that's going to be released. I have no idea. Yeah. I have a short story in a YA anthology called Battle of the Bands that comes out next September, which is so fun and really cute. It's literally about a high school battle of the bands, and each story takes place with a different band, and it just got optioned for a TV show, which would be really, really cool just to see that happen, just because I think it's such a great idea. That's edited by Eric Smith and Lauren Gabaldi, and there's 15 authors in there, and they're all awesome. And then I have a couple of things I can't really talk about yet, but yeah, I'm just trying to get through the day. So I don't know. I think we actually go to 7:40, by the way. So I think we have a little more time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, the second book in the Rogues and Remarkable Women series, and Earl, the Girl, and a Toddler. Everybody has that trope that they've always wanted to write. Mine has always been an amnesia trope. So this is my amnesia book, so I'm very, very excited. And Kensington just did a wonderful job on the cover.
Yeah.
And there's always a secret on every cover. So on the first book, you may not have noticed that the Duke's an amputee.
Oh,
I did not.
Yeah.
no.
So in this book, once again, there's a secret, and you'll figure it out when you actually read the book.
How exciting.
That one will come out in April, and in June will be Island Queen. It's my first hardcover. It's historical fiction. It's the remarkable life of Dorothy Kerwin Thomas. She was born enslaved, but managed to buy her freedom and the freedom of her mother and her children. And she goes on to be one of the wealthiest women in the West Indies. And this is circa 1798 to about 1830 timeframe. She's just a wonderful character. She lived through so many different things, but one of the things is she actually has a significant affair with Prince William Henry, the future King William IV. So it's going to be a phenomenal book, and once again, it's my first hardcover, and I'm really excited about that. And
When is that one? When is that one again, Vanessa?
Island Queen.
No, when?
June.
June.
June
Okay.
20 June next year.
Oh.
So I have an April and a June release next year.
Nice.
So I just had a new release with an anthology with Diana Palmer, and mine is called The Trouble with Mistletoe. It follows the middle Tucker brother, which goes way back to a book that was published in 2012 called Tucker's Crossing. And Noah is a Texas Ranger who doesn't want to come back to his small town, but is kind of blackmailed by his older brother to come home and spend the holidays. And he ends up falling for a girl that he went to high school with. So it was an unrequited love in high school, and now it's a second chance at love story. In January, the second book in the Rome series, Hopeless Romantic, comes out. It follows the teenage girl who runs through all three books in the series. It's the uncle, and he lives on a boat. He used to be a competitive sailor, and he ends up, his goal now that he's almost an empty nester is to travel the world on his boat, but he ends up falling for a woman who takes care of her younger brother and is kind of anchored in Rome, Rhode Island. So he has to choose between living out his dream of going on this amazing sailing trip around the southernmost tip of South America, or having his next big journey be love. That comes out the last Tuesday of January. And then in September, I have another novella coming out, and it's called The Corner of Cafe and Pumpkin. And it is one of a kind of a offshoot character. In my first book, Romantically Challenged, my character Annie went to a heritage camp when she was younger and was part of a group they called themselves the East Coast In-Betweeners. And so it's one of her friends that she met at heritage camp that lives in this small town in Maine. And that comes out in the last Tuesday in September of 2021. So that's what's up next for me. So it looks like we have time for one more question, and this is a really good one. Was there ever a book you had that you didn't want to finish writing because you loved the story and the characters so much you just couldn't bear for it to end?
Wow.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm like, lately there's a deadline, so it has to end. I think that's why part of maybe why I enjoy writing series, because I get to spend more time with the with the main familia. So like the Fernandez sisters in Match to Perfection. I wrote Yasmin's story first, but Yasmin is still in Lily's in book 3. And when Kensington asked me, invited me to write in the Fern Michaels anthology, and they said, I invented a cousin who came from Puerto Rico, so the girls are all in, you get to hear about the girls, and she lives with, Julia lives with Lily. So I get to hang out with the familias still. And the same thing, with Keys to Love. I'm writing about Ana Maria and her second chance romance with Alejandro, but Sarah and Luis are in the book. Actually, the scene that I was just copy editing, right? They're all in it together. So I still get to spend time with the characters that I love writing a series.
In my books, no one dies, right? So I don't care how many books out, those characters are still living. So you're always good with that. But in a particular series, you will see, once again, because of the close sisterhood, the friendships, these very close friendships, you see them living their lives and the continuations of relationship in subsequent books. And Patience, who's the heroine of the Duke, the Lady, and the Baby, she's Jamina's best friend. And so they're journeying through this thing together as they try to recover her identity. So you get to see people, but no, I believe in finishing a book on time so that it can get out to readers who will love to see that journey. If I kept writing, they would never get the book.
I always say my favorite book to write is the next one.
Yeah.
That's really good motivating. I'm gonna have to think about that one. I'm gonna remember that one.
I don't think I've ever not wanted to finish a book, but there are 2 times where I had so much fun writing the book that I was sad the fun was ending. And one was Ghosting, and one was my other YA book, The Geek's Guide to Unrequited Love. And those were like my 2 books that felt like they just came so easily. And I don't know why, but they just kind of came fully formed, which has never happened in any of the other books I've written. And I think that I really was sad that part of it was over, but I always want to finish, and I wanted to see the whole thing. And I love editing very much, and I love revising. So I just really want to like take the messy first draft and like put the puzzle pieces together and figure out like why I wrote this thing in chapter 3 that I didn't realize needed to come back in chapter 20. So yeah.
I'm the same way as all of you, it sounds like. But I think similar to Sarah, I hate writing the first draft. It is like torture. I don't know why. Just plodding through it. And I love the editing part. That's my favorite part of doing a book, is making a book. Taking, I don't know, the stuff that I made at the beginning, now that it's on paper, now I can really make it good. So that's my favorite part. So no, there's never been a time when I've been like, yeah, let's keep going. But similar to Priscilla, I love writing series, and for the same reason, and Vanessa, so you can continue to revisit them and see what their lives have continued to do and see those characters again. So it's kind of the best of both worlds that way.
I've never written a series, by the way. I'm like a standalone.
You're great. You get to revisit everybody.
Yeah.
I can't think of more stories for my characters ever. I'm like, I need to move on. I'm so jealous of people who can write them, because I feel like I can't write them.
All my secondary characters, I'll be in the middle of the book and be like, well, that one needs a story. I had not planned on.
There's one last question that Becky, who's here, she put it in the Q&A down here at the bottom. So if we want to just say 1 or 2, who are some authors that you all enjoy reading? We want to just throw out some other names real quickly for if Becky wants to.
So I love Jill Shalvez. I love the actually one of my favorite writers is Aaron Sorkin, who's actually a screenwriter, but He inspired me to want to be a writer watching The West Wing. Everything he's written, I'm a fan of. Yes. And so I try and capture his amazing dialogue when I write. So by far. And Suzanne Brockman, when I'm in the mood for a sexy Navy SEAL.
The Troubleshooters.
Oh, Aaron Sorkin fan.
Yes, Troubleshooters.
Yes. Vanessa, how about you?
I love, Beverly Jenkins, Alyssa Cole. I'm falling in love with Britt Bennett. I love Sarah McLean. She just finished up her latest series, and I still am amazed at how she made this man I hated for 2 books.
My God. The Bare Knuckle Bastard series.
Yes, made 2 books. I hated this man, and now I'm like, he's not that bad.
Sure.
That's a master class.
Yes. Kristen, you want to go?
Sure. I read fast, and so I read a lot. And now I'm trying to remember what I've read recently that I've really loved. I love pretty much anything by Lucy Parker, who does these really great kind of romantic comedy. She's got like a really good chemistry with her characters. I just finished a book by Naima Simone, which was fantastic, and love pretty much everything she writes. Let's see, Laura Temple, who writes in the historical space, also is fantastic. I started reading all of you guys because I was like, oh, I want to read, like, if we're going to chat, I want to read the books that you guys have been reading. And so I've been digging in. Actually, I'm on Vanessa's right now, and it's really good. And so let's see. I'm trying to think of what else I've read recently. Jennifer Beckstrand. I love her. I love Fern Michaels. more in that space. I love Diana Palmer when you get into the cowboys. So yeah.
I think for me, the author that really, well, years ago, it was Jude Deveraux in her Montgomery series, but more recently as a writer, that was as a reader. As a writer, or what Suze Brockman's Troubleshooter series is kind of like the Bible for me of how to write a series, because she's got like 1,000 characters in all these books, and they've all got their different stories, and you're like dying for Sam and Alyssa's story, right? Because they're secondary characters throughout multiple books, and then finally they get theirs. And so that's kind of like the holy grail of what I would love to be able to do with series. So her Troubleshooter series is always one, but other authors, like anything that Sonali Dev writes, it's just so rich with emotion and with culture and romance and even humor. So any Sonali Dev book is one that I will pick up. Alexis Daria's latest, or her Dance Off series I love, but her latest also is You Had Me at Hola. And so that's a book that I've really loved. Farah Rashan's The Boyfriend Project is another good one. And Kwana Jackson has the Real Men Knit is a really cute romance. And I also love the community that she's created. It's 4 foster brothers, and they inherit their foster mom's knitting shop. And so book 1 is Real Men Knit, and she's writing book 2. I think it's Lucas, and I really want Lucas's story. So I'm so looking forward to that next year at some point. But those are some. So I think it was Kwana Jackson and Farah Rashan, Sonali Dev, Alexis Daria, Mia Sosa's The Worst Best Man is freaking awesome. There is a tulip field and the hood of a car, and that's all I'm going to tell you. Go read the book. It's amazing.
I love Carrie Winfrey. She's also a fellow Nora Ephron fan, so I really appreciated her books. I was waiting for Tom Hanks and its sequel, not like the movies. I love Sally Thorne's Hating Game. I thought it was just like, it's such a perfect rom-com. I love Sarah McLean. And yeah, I've actually had a really hard time reading during the pandemic, so I'm like having Abby Jimenez. That's who I read that I also really loved this time. But yeah, so I've been reading so slowly that I'm like trying to remember what books I read. I think I read like 4 books in the last 6 months, which is very unusual for me, but it's just like, I think my brain is just shut off.
I've heard a lot of people say that they've had difficult time like reading, or difficult time concentrating on something that they used to easily during all of this. I feel like it's a strange time, and so whatever you can find. At the same time, I feel like it's as difficult as it's been to write. I also think a lot of people think of romance as the genre of hope, and so I'm like, there's a need for all of our books. That, you know, so there are readers out there that will get lost in Vanessa's story and all of our different story worlds and all of our characters. And so it's important that we keep on writing. Even when I'm pulling out my hair, I'm like, first of all, a deadline, but second of all, write to hopefully help readers fall in love with our characters like we do.
Well, we actually downsized because we were empty nesters. Our daughter went off to college. So we moved into an 800 square foot home. My husband wanted to do tiny living, and I said the smallest I could get is 800 square feet. And then, of course, my daughter came home from college and is doing college remotely. She brought a kitten. So we have an 11-year-old cat and a 7-month-old cat who hate each other. My daughter's in my husband's office. So it's been hard. It's kind of a comedy living in our own house. But it's also been really great to have family time, especially when your kids go off to school and grow up. To have her home has been a lot of fun and touching too. Yeah.
I was like,
That sounds wonderful. What is that like?
Right?
you know what, Sarah? I will say my girls are all off adulting, and I'm so proud of them, but this has been the longest in their life that I have gone without like hugging my girls. And that's the hard technology. I'm so thankful that we can FaceTime. We Zoomed for we had a karaoke party for my dad's 75th, birthday. We had people singing from, family all across the US. But I just want to hug my girls, and that's been the hardest thing. We're trying to plan maybe for Thanksgiving if we can all be together. But my parents and I live together, so when I come back, I'll need to isolate from them and take a test. Even if we're careful, I just don't want to bring anything home to them. So I've been hunkered down with them. but I miss my girls. That part's been hard.
Yeah. Well, thank you everyone for coming, and thank you Print Bookstore in Kensington for setting this up. Is there any last words? Do we all want to hold up our book so that readers can remember what our book cover looks like?
It's always fun hanging out with everybody.
I know. Thank you, ladies. And good seeing everyone again.
It was nice to meet all of you because I wasn't at your last panel. So
I know. Yeah. Thanks everybody who came. Thanks everybody who watched the video later, and I'll see. Read romance.
Happy reading.
Yes. Everybody be safe out there.
Yeah.
bye.
Bye.